Hey everybody, welcome back to Ravenstead. It's time for another build. I've got an idea to do a series of these terrain tiles, a 6-inch by 6-inch base, and I'm hoping to build these so that they kind of match in together or can be used singly. So this one's going to be a little hidden valley with a rocky spire in the background. So I'm just using some 2-inch foam here and breaking away little pieces to get that rocky texture, and then I'll start building those up. Here, I'm going to use a craft knife. I don't cut myself, so don't worry about that. You could use something a little bit more dull if you're nervous about working with a sharp blade like that. I'm making sure I've got some playable areas on this encounter tile, and then I'm just going to start putting this together. So a little hot glue, stick that down, and then I'm going to run a couple of deck screws up from the base into the thicker foam. Hot glue is perfect. PVA glue works well too. The screws just add a little bit of structure and a little bit of weight. And in this upper piece I just put a couple of toothpicks in there just for a little added strength. And we'll stack that spire up. There we go. I realized that I couldn't use my roll of or ball of aluminum foil there against the rocky areas, so I made a little thinner piece of aluminum. And that just gives me a little bit of texture on those factory surfaces. Here I'm using a brass brush to kind of scratch in striations into those rocks. Give it a little texture. I'm going to add a couple of little stones here. I have been using hardwood charcoal to make rocks, but the foam looks good, and it's also consistent texture-wise in the build. I added a couple others there, and now we're going to black bomb this piece out with a little bit of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint. Get that in all the crevices and kind of fill in all the seams. Make everything blend in, and it adds a little bit of toughness to the piece too. On the flat areas on the outside of the encounter tile, I'm just going to black those out with some flat acrylic paint. And once we've got that all dried out, it's time for some dry brushing. I'm going to use a palette here of graphite. This is a kind of real dark gray, really hard to see, and then a medium gray. And here in a sec I'll go over the palette with you and the names of the colors, but it's all craft paint, just stuff you can get from big craft store. So that medium gray goes over. So we built up our shadows in the background, and now we're hitting the highlights. This is a little light brown. I just wanted to add a little contrast in there. And I'll carry that over into the flat areas of the valley. And then this is a very, very light gray or beige. And then I'm just very gently touching the sharp edges of the terrain. And then a little bit of green, light green. I'll splotch that in. We are going to cover parts of this with flocking, so that'll kind of be hidden in the background. Now let me show you my palette here. This is the graphite gray. That's dolphin gray. That's a cinnamon, parchment, and clover, and then mixed a little bit with the parchment. We'll go over this with some washes. This is a burnt umber acrylic ink mixed with water, about 50-50, and I'm just going to wash this over the whole piece. And this kind of dulls down the sharp contrasts. Like you can see how bright that green looks just painted on, but with the brown wash over it, blends right in. It's a little bit of green wash. That's just the bright green paint mixed with water. And I do a wet on wet technique. If you've seen my other videos, you've seen me do this. So it just kind of blends the colors together. And that's a little bit of Vallejo rust wash. And I'm just putting that on straight out of the bottle. It's time to flock this piece. I'm going to put a little bit of PVA glue here, there, and everywhere where I want grass or mossy areas. That's fine flocking from Woodland Scenics. I'll just dust that on there. Shake off the excess, and that gives us our base flocking. And then I'm going to go in with a homemade flocking that I've done. Take preserved moss and a little bit of flower flocking and put that in a grinder, grind it up really fine, and I'll sprinkle that on. That gives us some texture and a little bit of brown color in there. I'll go in with some watered down PVA glue, and I'm going to stick down some medium flocking. That's another Woodland Scenics product. I put that on pretty heavily because that glue is fairly wet. Press it down and it soaks right in. There we go. I was going to preserve those edges. For some reason I thought it would look better when I put tiles together, but I decided to go back and just flock the edges. Now we're going to put on a little bit of foliage here. Some clump foliage and a little bit of preserved lichen here and there. I've got some static grass that I made as well that we'll put on. Got to have places for all your little critters to hide. There we go. Spot for the rabbits. There's some of that static grass going in. A couple more bushes in here. I want to make sure I keep most of the areas open so they're playable, so the mini can sit on there without toppling over. I decided to add a few flowers in here for the bees to buzz around. I'm thinking maybe one more little bush right here, and we're going to call this done. I'll spin it for you. You can get a closer look. And there it is, the hidden valley. That little overhang ended up looking more like a cave, so you could definitely use this for some kind of creepy encounter. Appreciate you watching, guys. Make sure you leave me a comment. Love to hear from you. I love reading all those comments down below. We've got a Patreon page too. Make sure you check that out. There's a link down in the description. There's for scale. Got some miniatures in there. They're like, oh, let's take a long rest here. What could go wrong? Maybe this dark cave. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.